Okay, I'm so excited for you to listen to this episode because it's just a different type of interview episode that I've done before. We don't have a lot of men on the show, but today we have the CEO of TempDrop. His name is Michael. He actually lives in Israel, which is so cool. Hebrew is his first language. And before we started, he's like, English isn't my native language. So like I might lose a word here and there. Like, I hope that's okay. I'm like, you're good. Like, this is super chill podcast. Like, don't worry. He did so good. I absolutely loved this episode and just chatting with him and hearing about like how a male came into creating a fertility awareness device, which was so cool to hear about it, and how passionate he is about knowledge over your body. And that's really why he created TempDrop, which in case you don't know what I'm talking about with TempDrop, I know a lot of you do. A lot of you even have it or are thinking about getting it, but TempDrop is a wearable, like an armband device to track your basal body temperature overnight. And it tracks so much other data too, which he talks about. And we really get into like why TempDrop is so accurate for tracking your fertility markers, for knowing when your temperature increases and knowing that is, if that is ovulation, and just like tracking your sleep and just everything. And it's so amazing to learn about because a lot of people are either not tracking their basal body temperature, which if you're listening to this podcast and you've heard maybe any episode, I hope you already know how freaking important it is to track your basal body temperature, whether you're trying to conceive or not. I know most of you listening, maybe you specifically are trying to conceive, but even if you're not, it is so important to have this information, which we talk about in this episode, because you need to know that you're ovulating. And getting a period is not a sign of ovulation. A positive LH strip is not a sign of ovulation. Your app just saying you ovulated without any tracking of your basal body temperature is not a sign that you ovulated. Like, ovulation is our fifth vital sign. That is literally as important as your body temperature, your blood pressure, your heart rate, your breathing rate. Like, it's just as important as all those things. So if you are not ovulating, it is a major issue for your overall health, not just for getting pregnant. And being able to track your basal body temperature is going to let you know if you are or are not ovulating. It can also give you insight into your thyroid health. Like, it is so freaking important. And it's, again, we need to understand how to track our biomarkers, like our cervical mucus, like our basal body temperature, so that we know when we're fertile, whether you want to get pregnant or if you want to avoid pregnancy without having to go on birth control. Because, this day and age, especially if you're listening to this podcast, the negative side effects of birth control. And we have other options available to us to prevent pregnancy without having to completely turn off our hormonal system. So I'm so passionate about learning about these things and having devices to support us in that knowledge. So I can't wait for you to listen to this episode to just hear about why it's so accurate as opposed to under the tongue thermometers, the user friendliness of it, like the ease of use, whatever, I don't know the word of it. And just like how he came about this, how you can use it to your advantage. Obviously, of course, if you already you've listened to this podcast before, I've been using TempDrop for almost a year now. I didn't use it prior to pregnancy because it was out, but like I didn't even really know about it too much back then. But now I've been using it for almost a year. I absolutely love it. I use it every single night. I always recommend it to my clients, especially those who have been trying to conceive for a while, who are already moms, who are shift workers. Like, it is so major. Of course, at the end, we talk about my discount code, but I'll just let you know up front too. It's of course in the show notes. I have a 12% off code for you. And if you're listening to this in real time, if it's March and you're listening to this, they're also doing a Women's Month discount for, I believe it's 20%, and you could stack my code on top of that, which is so freaking major. But anyway, all the information will be in the show notes. I'm excited for you to listen to this episode and just understand TempDrop more in case you do have it or you want to get it, and really just know like why it's so important to understand your body. So I can't wait to get into this episode. Let's dive right in. Hi, Michael. Thank you so much for coming on the Mind Your Hormones podcast. I know this isn't stuff you do all the time, so I'm so grateful that you're here. And I know my community is going to really benefit from hearing from you, the CEO of TempDrop, because a lot of my community uses TempDrop, or some of them are considering using it. So I know it's going to be a really good conversation. So thank you for being here. And before we dive in, I would love to just hear your story. Like, how did you get into this business? I'm just so curious to hear how it all started.
Well, long story. So I come from a relevant background, a professional background. I have a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering.
Mm.
and master's degree in biomedical engineering.
Oh,
And I worked in medical device startups. Even during my master's degree, I started working there. And after a couple of years, I've decided I've um, I've had enough experience that I want to think of my own idea. And
hmm,
then I just sat in coffee shops, wanting to be an entrepreneur. Um, Thought about ideas. One of them was TempDrop, and I can elaborate how it was. But
yeah,
basically, this is how it all started. And I went through the very long route of knocking on doors, trying to convince mostly investors. Just imagine a male trying to convince male investors um, about fertility tracking and
hmm,
fertility awareness education,
yeah,
etc. So it was not that easy. And At the end of the day, I understood that I need to somehow round a crowdfunding or something like that,
yeah,
which I have. So after about 2 years of trying to push and move things, and was not able to do well, to move slowly. I was able to move slowly, but then I understood I have to do some crowdfunding. I was
right.
able to secure some grants from the government, and
Mm.
then I launched the crowdfunding campaign in 2014, which is a very long time ago.
Yeah. Wow. So this has
Um,
been, so then, yeah. So before you dive deeper into that, so first of all, so when did this idea come about? Because now that was 2014. So what year was that?
It all started beginning of 2012.
Wow.
Honestly, yes, yes. So I was always very interested in thermodynamics and temperature, and
Yeah, I
I
was
like
gonna say,
thermodynamics
like,
as
as a male, what made you be like, I want to get into the fertility space? Like, did you have anyone in your family that was dealing with fertility issues, or like, what was that?
so honestly, it was purely business. It was purely trying to find a business, trying to find the need, something that people need. That
Yeah.
this is how it started,
Right.
and I wanted to develop something that relates to uh, accurately measuring temperature, which
Mm,
I thought was a challenge. And
yeah.
then I was looking for different businesses or different markets.
Yeah.
And the most natural thing is fever for babies, or
Mm-hmm.
for and for me it was someone probably did that. I don't want to. It's too um,
It's too mainstream. Like, there's too
too
many people doing
straightforward.
it.
Yeah,
Too
not very
saturated.
sophisticated. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then I started looking, and I identified fertility apps, and I'm talking
Mm.
2012.
Yeah. So there probably wasn't
There are
many
about
back then.
60 million downloads of fertility app back then, and
Oh,
all of
wow.
them, of course, most of them required user to enter their temperature manually every day. This is when I
Mm.
started looking into it, and then I remembered that when when my wife when my wife and I wanted to have our second daughter.
Yeah.
It took a while. It took so with our firstborn, it was like after a month or two
Yeah.
of trying,
Yeah.
and we didn't really know, like, of course, what I know now, that many did not know,
Yep.
and many don't know, how to time intercourse, and what is
Yeah.
ovulation, and how many days in a month you're in a cycle you're fertile, etc.
Yeah, we grow up thinking
Um,
you could get pregnant literally every day. Like, they scare you into thinking you could always get pregnant. I'm like, it's like only 5 or 6 days you can.
Yeah, yeah. So when we did have those issues, I remember then looking into, okay, how can you understand? And then I came. Then was the first time I was aware of tracking temperatures, and
Mm.
temperature shift and ovulation, and
Hmm.
I thought it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then I also understood that the difference is very subtle, and
Hmm.
so you need to accurately measure or track temperatures very accurately.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do it orally, because the whole idea of waking up every day seemed to me ridiculous, especially when I'm talking 2012. Wearables and all those gadgets started to come along, smartwatches, etc.
Yes.
So I thought, okay, I'll develop something that could measure the temperature very accurately,
Yeah.
and I will somehow sync it to apps because I didn't know how to develop an app. I was a mechanical engineer.
Mm-hmm.
I said to myself, I would never, I don't know how to approach that, but I do know how to approach developing, a mechanical, some gadget.
Right.
Um, and so, and also I did not, because you can use, the device to get pregnant, but also when I started learning about everything, it came clear to me that you can track your body accurately and then make conscious decisions if you would like to avoid, again, not by using
Yes.
TempDrop, but by practicing fertility awareness methods and tracking your temperature daily, as well as cervical mucus, etc. So of
Mm-hmm.
course it was clear to me that education is also an essential part of the whole offering.
Yeah, because
um,
a lot of people will go on birth control instead of learning about their fertility, markers, and they don't even want to be on birth control, especially when they learn about the negative side effects of it. So this obviously is a great tool to help support you, obviously getting to their education for it and being safe about it, but being able to know when you're ovulating, when you're fertile, when you're not, and using this as one biomarker so that, like you understand your body. We were never taught how to understand our body. And I think it's so important that we have these tools now that can help us see, even if you're ovulating. There's so many women that aren't even ovulating and don't even know it. And whether you want to get pregnant or not, it's so important for your overall health to make sure that we are ovulating. So it's so huge that this is something that like is out there now. And now it's obviously more mainstream, not the wearable, but like actually tracking your ovulation. This is something that more and more people are learning about now. Even when I got into this space in like 2019, 2020, there were not a lot of people talking about it as much as they are now. Like it definitely ramped up over the last like 5 years. So I love that you're in it for the education as well. And there's just so many tools within it that I want to like talk about also. But um, so
this is
what you were talking about a second ago was the idea of waking up and taking your temperature every morning. So I obviously work with clients who are trying to conceive, and most of them have been trying for months or years. And it's very triggering for them to have to wake up, take their temperature, see the temperature, maybe see it not rise or maybe see it drop, and then know that they're getting their period. And so TempDrop is such a great solution for that because you just wear it at night, you roll over, you don't have to look at it. It syncs. You could even like not even sync it for like a day or two. You could sync it after and it all goes in. So can you just talk about for a second like the difference between and why TempDrop is so accurate as opposed to doing it under the tongue because of the need to like same time every morning, like all of that.
Yeah, sure. So let's first understand the principle of daily tracking.
Yes.
A BBT, or basal body temperature, is something that was invented by, I think, or called by Dr. Barnes, if I'm not mistaken,
Mm-hmm.
who wanted to find a way to track thyroid issues. And there's a strong connection between, the thyroid is like the thermoregulation gland of the
Yes.
body. So it all started from there, and of course, the ability to see the temperature rise after ovulation is part of tracking your daily temperature.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you take your temperature early, and the whole idea is to have a daily reference. And since all of us are active most of the time, the reference is at deep sleep.
Yeah.
And since you cannot measure your temperature when you're in deep sleep, you're supposed to wake up every day at the same time. So your 24-hour circadian cycle will have a daily reference.
Right.
Um, Stay in bed without moving, because even movement can affect your temperature, especially if you're looking for a zero point 0.2 to zero point 0.5 delta between, as a temp shift.
Increase, right. Yeah,
Um,
because it's so subtle.
Yes, and then write that down. Now, if you, just before you woke up, for example, you were sleeping with your mouth open, will be different than if you were sleeping with the mouth closed.
Mm,
So there's so much noise going into a 1 or 2 minute reading at 6 a.m. every
yeah.
morning. And instead of that, I said, okay, there's so much data when you sleep. And then also when I started doing the research, I found out there's one article, of course, I think it's published on our website as well, work that was done to compare different measurement methods. There were
Mm,
oral, in the ear, axillary, and also a swan guns, like a transducer, a temperature transducer near the heart, basically inside.
Oh,
And the result of this study was that the most it was, I think it was reliable plus cost saving plus is oral for 10 minutes and up. So if you measure your oral temperature for 10 minutes or 10 or 12, I think it was 12 minutes and up, as good as core body temperature.
right. So you have
So
to hold the thermometer in your mouth for 10 to
who
12
has,
minutes.
yeah, who has
Who
12
has
minutes?
time to do that? That's crazy.
So, and then I said, okay, now if I, for example, if I, sorry, axillary. No,
Under
sorry.
the arm.
Apologies. Axillary for 12 minutes. Sorry.
Oh,
Axillary for 12 minutes and up. I
okay.
apologize.
It's okay.
Okay, so, and then the whole idea became, if I'm able to put a thermometer here and make sure that this is what I wear
An
for
axillary for people listening because they can't see you is under the arm.
under the arm,
So
yes,
it's under
armpit.
the arm for 10
Axillary,
minutes.
yes,
It
axillary is
it is
armpit.
also more accurate too though to keep the temperature in your mouth longer too, like people say. So I know that I don't know like the studies on that, but I know for people who are doing it under the tongue that they'll get more accurate numbers if they keep it in there longer, which again, who has time to do that?
It depends if it's an electronic or digital thermometer, then it would usually stop after a couple of minutes, so it won't really
Right.
help if you keep it. But if it's a germanium or a mercury, which they don't make anymore, then yes, it will
Right.
affect if you leave it in your mouth.
But
Um,
anyway, so axillary under the arm.
Axillary for 12 minutes. And
Okay.
then I said, okay, so when you sleep, and of course there was the whole thing with BBT and the reference temperature that should be in deep sleep. Then I said, okay, so I decided to invent something
Mm-hmm.
that will be worn underarm
Yep.
and also take into consideration all the movements and everything, because
Yeah.
I really want to know what happens after 12 minutes like this.
Yeah.
So the TempDrop sensor has two temperature sensors in it
Mm.
and an accelerometer that will identify when movement is happening.
Oh, okay.
So we take all this data, we collect this data throughout the night
Yeah.
from two temperature channels and motion
Mm.
to collect the true pattern of your sleeping temperature.
Mm.
So for most people, it usually goes up slightly in the beginning of the night, then goes down, then before you wake up, it goes back up. So we have all this. We have all this information,
Mm.
and we can derive a number or a sleeping temperature from all this data.
Wow.
So this is in a nutshell. And just one more thing to go into how we're so accurate, because we have a motion sensor here and two temperature sensors. We can tell when the arm is like this. For example, if I'm asleep and then my
And your
arm
arm
went
is
like
up.
this, or if I got up to the toilet,
Yep.
or crying baby,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. We
Yeah.
can filter those noises out.
Right. So that doesn't affect the temperature.
Exactly. So at
Yeah.
the end of the day, what I'm getting is events through the night where
Yeah.
my arm was closed for a long period of time, over
Right.
12 minutes,
Yeah. Oh,
which
yeah.
I know is like the core temperature. And I
Right.
get these points throughout the night, and I can connect them with an algorithm that filters out those noises.
Mm.
So you get a really accurate picture of how
Mm.
your sleeping temperature looks. And all we need to do, first of all, is calculate a representative number, but also learn the monthly pattern. So not only the nightly pattern we can learn, and also the monthly pattern. Here is really how you can take measuring your oral temperature at 6 a.m. and really go deep into as much data as you can have on that daily temperature,
Yeah.
to allow you to give accurate results.
Wow, that's so cool. So it's this, yeah. So because of that motion sensor, there because sometimes too, because I've taken oral before I used TempDrop years ago, and there will always be like a random, temperature that's like out of nowhere that's like doesn't fit into the, and I'll even when I look at my clients' charts, there's like a random number that's either way too high or way too low, and it doesn't make sense. And the TempDrop, what you're saying, will filter all those noises out from you waking up to
Yes.
go to the bathroom, moving your arm, because you have the data over the whole night, where the majority of the time you're not going to be up, moving or whatever. And it's so much more realistic, especially for people who are already a mom. Like I currently have a daughter. I'm going to be 2 in June in a few months. And, I'm up with her sometimes. I do not wake up at the same time every morning. Like, I'm not in sound sleep always a couple hours before I wake up because that's also important for under the tongue thermometer. So, and because there has to be like zero point 0.3 to zero point 0.5 degree increase, like that's so tiny that a lot of times you won't get that like accurate number if you're taking your temperature sometimes at 6 a.m., 7 a.m., and you're doing it under the tongue. I'll see so many times clients chart, the numbers will be all over the place and they'll think they ovulated, but they didn't because they just took their temperature later. So it's just so much easier too. And I love the collection of data and that you started with a thyroid issue because that's another great reason to track your temperature. So many women experience hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, all these thyroid issues. And you can see very clearly when you take your temperature, if you have a low temperature, like if you're doing Fahrenheit, like in the 95s, and you are experiencing a lot of low temperatures, that could be a big clue that you have some thyroid issues going on. So it's just another great reason to track all of that.
Yeah, so I think that really what we're trying to do is provide as much as possible in the app as well for you to be able to see your chart and make sense of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So people who do have it, right, and they're like, okay, let me just like make sure I'm using it correctly, right? So when you're putting your armband on, you want it to be as high, like closest to your armpit as possible.
Yes, close to the armpit. So when you put the arm down, the sensor is basically in the armpit.
Yep.
So
Okay.
usually you have like two muscles here that sits around here, and we have all those tutorials in the app to show you how to wear it properly, and I think also we have very good support that can help users who are
Yeah,
having
your
this.
customer support is great. Okay, and now you do have two different versions of TempDrop right now, correct? So can we talk about the version one, version two? What are the differences between them?
So it's basically the story of my life or the story of TempDrop, how it evolved.
Yeah,
So again, it was TempDrop is a startup. It was a startup company, bootstrap company. I didn't have any investors. It was
so
the
cool.
most genuine, organic growth of a company from users, through users. Our Facebook group again is something that was created with the help of the users, managed by users initially before there was a company. Everything was volunteer. So and and I was able to develop TempDrop, which
Yeah,
as an engineer, I did my best. But as you build it, you already think how I can make it better,
of course.
or what is bad, or what is not user friendly.
Yeah.
Um, and it had its issues, and when the company became more sustainable and strong, and
Yeah.
I wanted to correct all these things, I started working on TempDrop 2, which is largely it's an identical device, but it's similar in the way that components are newer. The memory can
It's
be,
bigger.
yeah, it's bigger.
Hmm.
The One of the major things that we wanted to improve was the battery change,
Mm.
battery replacement. The whole idea, if you look at TempDrop, it is quite different than other gadgets in the way that it is not chargeable, so it does
Hmm.
not. You don't need to plug it
Yeah,
to a
no.
wire.
Yep.
It uses a single coin cell battery, and the whole idea was that this battery will last at least 6 months,
I
and
have
you just
never changed mine, and I've been wearing it well over 6 months, and I use it every single
Yes,
night.
I know. So it's around 8 months, 6 to 8
Yeah,
months. But
it's
then
amazing.
the whole idea is replace the battery, and then you have it for another 8 months, and that's it.
Yeah.
You don't need to remember anything. I really wanted it to be a life companion.
Mm-hmm.
So the battery replacement in TempDrop 2 is much simpler, much easier. Does
And
not,
longer.
yeah. Well, users had issues with the battery replacement of TempDrop 1. Um, of course, we see, the so far the feedback on TempDrop 2 is amazing.
I love it.
Also, it is produced in a different factory,
Mm.
higher quality,
Mm-hmm.
higher ability to scale. So it's
That's
really
great.
going forward was the natural thing to do.
Yeah. Are you eventually going to only offer TempDrop too, or are you going to always have the option?
No, it's right now. So TempDrop 1 is already sold only in the States. We don't sell it worldwide anymore.
Just kind of
Also,
using all the
clearance
inventory.
sale as well. Um, Generally, we promote our customers to buy TempDrop 2, which is, we think,
Yeah,
better.
it's amazing. It's super, first, it's super comfortable. You don't even know that you're wearing it. Like I said, I've been using this since last summer. I don't even remember which, and right now we're in March. I honestly don't remember what month I started it, but I know it was summer that I started Temp Drop 2, and I have not had to change the battery yet. It's like, and I use it every single night.
So you were, if it's summer, you were among the first ones to get the TempDrop 2, I think.
Yes,
The
I
first batch.
was. I was one of the, like, people who were like helping promote it and get it out there. So yeah, so what month did
Wow,
it come out?
cool, cool. Yeah, yeah. It was May, I think we started.
Okay, yeah.
May
So like
2024.
it's been well over 6 months and I have not had to change it yet.
That's
And
great.
it's so amazing. I love it. I love that there's also the option. I think that's like the upgraded option with it. Like I could see my sleep tracking, which I love to see. Like you shows when you wake up and which I like to see, especially with my daughter, like looking at like, oh, like how many times did I actually wake up with her? Like, cause sometimes it's just a blur. Like you don't even know what's going on. So it's amazing. It's so user friendly. I literally am always recommending it to my clients, especially who are trying to conceive, because it really helps them pinpoint what's going on. It's so easy to see. It's less triggering for them when they are tracking. And because it is so subtle, like you're able to really get that accuracy without having to be so calculated of waking up at the same time, making sure you're sleeping 2 hours before, all the things with under the mouth.
And you keep mentioning the sleep. There's also the thing with regular sleep schedule. So night shift workers, nurses,
Yes.
stewardess,
Yes.
they use TempDrop, and we know that. We
Yep.
know that they have a very good experience with it.
Yes, I guess a lot of my clients are shift workers as well, and they're always like, "How am I supposed to do this?" I'm like, "Just do temp drop." Like it doesn't. It's okay. It's so good.
Yeah.
So I love that so much. And okay, so we talked about are there any like things coming up your sleeve, like any different devices or new updates or anything coming out, or you're still just like working on optimizing temp drop 2?
What's coming out is soon we will. We're working on publishing some clinical numbers of our accuracy, which is
Amazing.
very interesting. I don't want to share still, but
Yeah, of
once we
course.
do, it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Um, for me, I really hope and believe that we will able to identify various conditions. So let's assume we are able to identify endometriosis patterns and then
Mm.
and notify the user. We don't have it still, right? I'm just
Yeah, yeah, of
sharing
course. Yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
my future
Your
thoughts, and
entrepreneur mind.
which I hope to achieve, and I believe that's achievable.
Yes.
So because we have, just imagine how much data we have. Since
Yes.
2017, we've collected, minute by minute temperature data, including motion of, naturally ovulating women, I would say, right?
Yes.
And so there are so many patterns out there, and just imagine that if we can identify specific patterns, for example, endometriosis, or women who has endometriosis, or at least have it diagnosed, and then we can
Mhm.
see in their patterns specific, things that can hint
Yes.
of a new user that might be experiencing endometriosis, and then say, hey, you might be having this, go check it out.
Right, go check it out. Which is so major because it takes women literally like decades to get an endometriosis diagnosis and PCOS, which I know that's what you mentioned, but in any type of reproductive disorder, it literally takes women sometimes a decade to get the actual proper
Yeah, so
diagnosis.
PCOS, endometriosis,
Yes,
so many things
hypothyroidism,
that,
all of it.
yes, yes.
That's amazing. Wow, that's so cool. And I believe that you'll be able to do it. So that's so amazing. And yeah, so another thing really quick within the app for people who are using it with tracking their cervical mucus too, you obviously have in there, because that's so important for fertility, and that could be a pattern that is really important to see month over month, and you're able to easily go in and see what days you had your cervical mucus. Like you have different pictures for each thing. Even for me reading my clients charts, when I look at it, I love that like next to the number I could see a little picture of whatever like symptoms they had that day. So it's so easy for me to go in and be like, oh, okay, you had your cervical mucus here, the increase here. Like it's just so user friendly.
the whole idea of body literacy is something that I understood from day one.
Yes.
You asked as a male, so as a male,
Yes,
I have gadgets.
it's
I have
different for a
gadgets.
male to get
I
into
have
it.
gadgets that can tell me, that I ran across the block, and maybe my health is a little bit better, and that's it. And it's super boring.
Yeah.
But by wearing TempDrop, you can know so much,
Mm-hmm.
and really, it really affects everything, like in your week, your life decisions.
Yes.
So it helps you so much, rather than just wearing a sports watch,
Smartwatch.
or something.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole idea of, listen, if we can only tap into what's going on in the body, which is what I think TempDrop does. We show you,
Yes.
like, the hormonal fluctuations,
Shifts.
if you might say, of what
Yes.
happens in your body over a month, and you can see, does it look normal?
Yes.
Is it the follicular phase, the luteal phase? Does it seem normal? And not only that, we try to educate our users. So we have the
Mm-hmm.
TempDrop Academy that
Yes.
really gives you a high level understanding of what is symptothermal method, or how to track cervical mucus, what is
Yep.
cervical mucus, how to
Mm-hmm.
track it, why do we need to track it, what is a temp shift. So all these educational content is something that we continue to develop and create, because we believe that knowledge is number one.
Yes.
And how my wife and I were ignorant in a way.
Yeah. Most
I
people
wouldn't that
are.
I wouldn't want that ignorance, and I can share the knowledge, especially if you wear something that can
Mm-hmm.
give you like a mirror image of what's going on inside your body, and then you understand. Then you make conscious decisions. Then if you have issues. Then
Yes.
everything is smarter. That's all.
Yes, it's so huge because this is stuff we should have learned in school. I always talk about that on the podcast. I'm like, we
Yes,
should have learned this in
yes,
school. We had
yes.
zero education of first of all, we didn't even call it cervical mucus. We would call it like discharge. We had no idea. Like it would just be there or wouldn't be there. Like there was no clue that it was like, oh, you'll see this as you're approaching ovulation. If you're having it all throughout your cycle, you probably have too much estrogen. Like we never learned any of these things. And it's so important for us to have the body literacy, especially now because you'll go to the doctor. I mean, maybe it's different over in Israel. I don't know. But in America, you go and they'll just like always recommend a medication. They're not teaching you anything about your body. Like you have to be knowledgeable about what's going on inside your body so that you don't feel like you're backed into a corner to do something you don't want to do, or just like have ownership over your health and feel empowered when you're going to the doctor and you're making decisions instead of feeling like you have no idea what's going on, because unless you teach yourself, you have no idea. Like no one is teaching you
Exactly.
it. So
Exactly.
it's so important. And I love that, of course, you have this device, but like you said, you have so much education on your website, on your socials, in the app itself. And
And the
every single
support, the
woman,
community, we really try
yes,
to engage as much as possible.
yes. And every single woman, whether you're trying to conceive or not, like you need to know what's going on in
To
your
know, yeah,
body. It's
for sure,
so huge.
for sure.
So I'm so glad that you created this. I think it's absolutely amazing. I'm so excited to see what else is going to be coming out eventually with it, because you're just super smart and you're obviously very passionate about this topic, which I think is so cool. Um, so is there anything else you want to end on? I feel like we touched on a lot of stuff. Obviously, if you want to try TempDrop out, you could, I talk about it all the time on the podcast, but tempdrop.com, I have a discount code for everybody too. I'll put that in the show notes. And you always have awesome sales going on too.
Actually, we
Like,
have a great sale this month. It's Women's Month, so
yes.
if this podcast interests you, and you are curious, and we have a really amazing sale these weeks.
Yes. Was it 20% off? I forget.
Uh, I think so, but
Yeah,
it's
I
on the
think it's
website.
something that I'll put it in the show notes. But what's also cool is the discount code that I have stacks on top of it, which is what I love
Yes,
with
it's a
TempDrop
double
too.
dipping.
A lot of companies don't do that, which is
Yes, yes.
amazing. So if you're listening to this and it is Women's Month, it's still March, get your double dip discount. We'll put in the show notes. And even if it's not March, you could always use my code no matter what it is. But they always have such cool stuff going on. And I highly recommend it. I've never had a client get it and be disappointed. Like they're always like, I wish I had it sooner. And
Thank you.
it's so major.
And by the way, one of the things that I think might be quite different, and I started really from the campaign. And so the campaign was 2014, but then after about a year, I offered customers to pre-order the product on the website. And when we launched, because I knew that customers will be hesitant or not confident enough to buy something, which was back then, it was, I think, $150 from a company they don't know of.
Yeah.
We came up with the confidence, which allows you pay an extra fee, and then you have 12 months of confidence. You can even get pregnant and send it back, return it for the money back. If you
Wow.
don't like it, if it's not comfortable, if you found something else,
Mhm.
whatever, you can send it back. So the
Wow.
confidence feature is again something that I think, to me, really was made to help end users, to help the customers as much as possible to try it out and see what they can learn about their bodies.
Yes. I didn't even
And
know
I
that
think I
that
think
existed. That's so cool.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow, that's
We're
amazing.
very pro customer, pro user.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Your customer service is always amazing. Like I always have, like, if my client has an issue with it, I'm like, just reach out to customer service. They're always so, so helpful. So yes, that's so cool. I did not know that that existed. I love that so much. And I'm sure no one's going to return it once they get it. It's so awesome. I just also like seeing, like, days I was in deep sleep, and when I wasn't, I'm like, ooh, what did I do tonight that I was actually in deeper sleep than when I wasn't? Like, it's just so cool to have this information. So thank you so much for sharing all of this. I'm so grateful you came on the show.
Thank
I
you,
know it's not
Corinne.
your favorite thing to do, but I'm glad that you came on.
Thank you, Corinne. It was a pleasure. Although it's not, I'm not used to it. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Of course. And everyone who's listening, please share this episode with someone, any girlfriend, like your friend, your cousin, whoever. It doesn't have to be someone who's trying to conceive. Obviously, if they are, this is super helpful, but truly anybody who just wants to understand more about their body, like,
Know
this
your
is so
Yeah,
major.
yeah. Know your
Yeah.
body.
Exactly. Thank you so much again, Michael, for being
Thank
here.
you,
We'll put
Corinne.
all the information in the show notes to the website, the discount codes, like everything. And I just appreciate your time and for creating this amazing, device for women to understand their bodies more. So thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you very much, Corinne. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. If you loved this episode and learned something valuable, please share it with a friend who you think would also love it, or post it on social media and tag me so I could personally say thank you for helping me spread this important message. I am beyond grateful to be here with you. So until next time, stay intentional, stay consistent, and always mind your hormones.